I know there's lots happening here in Houston. For one, I think the main thing Micah and I have been wanting to talk about, and as somebody just noted here in the station, our show is probably one of the first places in the city that was immediately on the case of the Harding Street raid, the Tuttle raid, as it sometimes is known. This is the death of two Houstonians, Dennis Tuttle, Rhogena Nicholas, and their dog, here in Houston, Texas, back January 28th. So we were one of the first people to not only call out that, hey, this doesn't seem like we're getting all the facts, but to stay on the case. You know,
and you actually went out there to the Tuttle house and witnessed for yourself the holes.
Yeah, there's holes on the outside of the house where a forensic pathologist and a forensic investigator who was hired by the family, by Rhogena Nicholas's family, he came in, and this guy's worked for the state. He's got, all kinds of history and expertise in this area and time in this field, and so he found that the shots that were the fatal wound that killed Rhogena Nicholas when she was sitting on her couch on 5 o'clock on a Saturday afternoon, it came from outside of the building, people shooting at her from outside. So the story that we were told, that the cops came in and then Dennis Tuttle started shooting at them, and the cops had a gunfight with him while Rhogena Nicholas ran in and tried to tackle an officer. Like, none of these things seem to line up with the facts that we are still just getting to this day. So there's we've known from the beginning. That's why Micah and Jack and I have all stayed on this topic and continued to focus on it. And as Micah said, I did go out there.
It was no special power that let us know. It was just reasoning about what we are typically told by these people. Wouldn't you say, Derrick? Like a pattern of behavior almost.
Yeah, and the pattern of behavior that we know that HPD has committed violence against Houstonians in the past, but also the response that was pretty immediate from the president of the police union, Joe Gimaldi, who was pretty much just accusatory from the beginning, saying any of those people on social media who are out there spreading, talking crap about cops, we got your number, we're coming for you, and say they were going to use social media to find people. And it was just, instead of being like, we're going to get to the bottom of this, officers have been shot, 2 Houstonians are dead, it was just, very defensive, like right off the bat.
Almost like a kid, when you come in and they're like,
Well,
I wasn't doing anything.
So I honestly think that hopefully we will find out more, because I guess the latest news is, to actually get to the point here, is that the officers, Stephen Bryant and Gerald Goins, who were involved in this, were both arrested by the FBI this week. And that was a pretty big step, because we know that the FBI, the Justice Department, had been investigating. We know that the DA was investigating, HPD claiming, their own investigation. And the officers were already facing charges, but now they've been arrested by FBI, which means they're facing federal charges. In addition to that, we have the arrest of one of the neighbors, and we got a little bit more of the piece of the puzzle. And I will say again, I'm pretty sure we've mentioned this here on Freethinker Radio over the years, and definitely didn't hear this on the Chronicle or Channel 13 or anything like that, that when I went out there, as Micah mentioned, when I went there to the protests and saw the house and met some of the neighbors, they mentioned that, off the record, somebody had told me that when they went around the neighborhood and wanted to hold a vigil for Dennis Tuttle and Rhogena Nicholas, all the neighbors were down with it except for one neighbor. One neighbor was very much like, screw them, we're not going to help them out, and apparently had a history of not getting along with the Tuttles and with Miss Nicholas. So there was already some suspicion whether that neighbor had anything to do with it, because we know that the original complaint against the Tuttles was based on some anonymous call to HPD. And so that neighbor, that woman, has now been arrested by the FBI, too, for lying to 911, lying to emergency dispatchers about drugs and weapons being at the Tuttle's house. So, we have a little bit more of the facts, like I said, but I don't think we still have all the details, because some unanswered questions for me, Micah, are why has Acevedo from the very beginning been lying, and I say lying, choosing my words carefully. Why has he refused to answer any of the family's questions? Why did they immediately take their side, and why did they never offered the family an apology. They continue to stand by their story, and HPD, even to this point now, still isn't acknowledging that, okay, we made some mistakes. Acevedo from the very beginning was saying, I was there within 15 minutes.
I think it's the troubling aspect of having, whether it was this case or any other sort of situation, a dogmatic worldview. They're holding this dogmatically that these people are guilty, or they were holding it dogmatically that they're guilty. Hey, it looks like we might have some no longer technical difficulties here. So I think that it's really something like that, you know? I mean, it's that team mentality, the collective think type of mentality that the group is telling me this. Never mind that there's individuals on the other end of this. And we're going to get to the same sort of universal aspect between this failed Tuttle Street raid and some, I guess you could call it public school abuses later, where being told to do something by the collective or your loyalty to the collective is overriding some people's rational love for human beings and the respective rights that they might have. And it seems like this Tuttle Street thing, at least with Officer Goins, is a prime example of that, coming, up in this instance.
Yeah, I want to add to that, Micah, just to kind of emphasize the importance of the Harding Street raid and the Tuttle raid. It's because, again, HPD continued to cover for the officers and say that nothing wrong was done. Even to the point once the officers were arrested, they just claimed that it's just these two officers. How come HPD never charged this neighbor? Obviously they had, I'm assuming, some of the similar information or same information. I definitely think we still don't have the full picture, but I do want to say, thank you for one, KPFT giving us a home where we can question things like this and not be called crazy that, hey, maybe we don't necessarily want to blindly trust the authorities in this case based on their history, and to every one of the listeners who has called in and expressed their views over the last, 8, 9 months, 10 months.
It's really meant a lot because
kept the story alive.
I think what you're saying about the views of the listeners have really helped reassure us that talking about this is the right way, rather than just holding any sort of dogmatic position, that talking about it is, because we know a lot of these callers that call in, like maybe 30% of them call again and again, and we are thankful for them being there consistently. They're supporters. But my point is, we've heard some of these callers, be antithetical to our views in some ways, and some be pro. But I would say across the board, people stood up and did not like that response from HPD or the whole mess. And I think it was reassuring to see that. And if we didn't talk about it, if we did just like the union president said, and shut up, Jamaldi, was that his name?
Joe Jamaldi.
Yeah, and shut up about it, then, I'm sure that in lots of authoritarian regimes would love that.
Yeah, thankfully people didn't shut up and they kept asking questions. So we will continue to follow this story. And now, just repeating, the FBI arresting 2 former HPD officers and a neighbor, and a little bit more of the truth coming out about the Tuttle raid. What do you think about this, Johnny? I mean, we've been following it since the beginning. Did you see the news when this happened?
I didn't see the news. I just read an article on it today. I think it's good that at least the federal government is coming in and trying to clean up some of the mess. I just hope there's some kind of conviction, because the whole thing just stinks like you know what. And
yeah, hopefully it's not a case of the federal government coming in and then nothing happened.
You talked about Patricia.
There had to be some kind of outside investigation, which was clear to me, because the people affected by it had to fund their own investigation. That's what bothered me the most.
And each step has been resisted. We were talking about that and the resistance that came out even on that investigation. And, this is something that was speculated early on. 53-year-old woman named Patricia Garcia has been arrested in connection with the raid. Garcia is accused of conveying false information by making several fake 9/11 calls. Oh, they were real calls.
She's just a normal citizen?
She was a neighbor. And this is what I was saying. I don't know if you heard a couple minutes ago. We were told way back when on one of our shows that the neighbor, and apparently this is the neighbor, there was only one neighbor when they went around asking all the neighbors if they could hold a vigil in the neighborhood for Dennis and Rhogena, who was like, heck no, I don't want anything to do with them. And I was told by somebody they had a history of something going on. People already suspected that she was involved, and now we know that was
She told the police they had machine guns in there. These drug addicts.
Spooky. We just don't want to set a precedent where you can have some kind of grievance with your neighbor and then call the cops and they kick the door in first reaction or something like that. Hopefully we go off more evidence than random neighbor call.
Yeah, and confidential informants. Think about what kind of world it is where the people that speak out are confidential. The speak out, that are your people that, what is it, like you're supposed to be able to see your accused in court, right? But you got confidential informants, and you've got anonymous tips, like this Garcia lady was. So you have no vision, no transparency of the action that kicks in the door, that triggers it like that. And, in the long run, what happens? Garcia may get 5 years in prison for her role.
Yeah, the thing is, and I want to make this point that we've talked about before, Micah, that if the cops, and I think you even said this too, Johnny, if the cops hadn't been shot, then we probably would have had no idea that this was even going on. You know what I mean? Like, because they wouldn't have made of a deal if it was just the cops raided the house of some drug dealers with weapons and this and that, and they had to kill him in a shootout.
It would have fit that
was like
standard cookie cutter.
That's what I'm saying. They could wrap that up
it,
in a nice little package.
It
but
begs
instead,
the question: has it been done before?
Oh,
where
absolutely.
Maybe something
is it happening in your city?
Injured? Yeah.
Well, and this is why cases, I think it said it was something like 2,000 cases that Goins and Bryant were involved in were now being reviewed, and potentially people having cases dropped against them because these cops might have fabricated evidence in the past. So
it's at least retroactively making people take a look at some other cases. I mean, people need to remember that you are Dennis Tuttle. You are Rhogena Tuttle. You know, like you can have this happen to you.
Or you might even be, you know, this may sound a bit far-fetched, but as we're talking about this, you might even be one of those 5 officers that was hurt besides Gerald Goins, besides the crooks. You might even be the Stephen Bryant guy who tried to back his friend Gerald Goins and ends up lying about the situation also, who could at that point choose not to do that. You could, you know, these are why it's important to hold these people accountable, because otherwise you could just be like a foot soldier that wakes up in a war zone because you were serving these people above you, thought you were protecting some woman's daughter from machine gun heroin dealers. You know, I mean, you could be that guy. I mean, I've seen stories where that guy's the hero.
It's true, and just awareness of the situation should, you know, put some perspective on everybody, because these people are dead. They're not going to get their day in court.
I think we all have a lot more power than we think, and it just comes in different moments. You know, and, you know, they step up for right, and it's about your character that you're building.
Hey everyone, this is Derek with the Conscious Resistance Network. You just watched a clip from Freethinker Radio, my weekly radio show that I host on Fridays and Mondays here in Houston on 90.1 FM Houston. We're going to start doing a live broadcast of that on video for those of you on YouTube, maybe beginning this week, but for sure in the near future. If you want to catch those episodes, though, I always post the archives here on the channel. And I want to remind you guys that we are running in the last days of the Support the Future of the Conscious Resistance Network crowdfunding campaign. We've currently raised $445. If anybody else is interested in investing in this campaign, which is helping me write the next documentary, our 5G Trojan Horse documentary, as well as my next book, How to Opt Out of the Technocratic State, all of this work is being done with your support. So if you want to be an investor in those projects, as well as my update on the Epstein story, update on the Finders story, and all these upcoming projects, please check out the link in the description below the video. Thank you for your support, and until next time, remember, you are powerful, you are beautiful, you are free. Peace.